Hello, Old Outdoor Brat here, coming to you today from Goosenecks State Park in southern Utah, which is basically a campground. It's dispersed camping, sort of, right on the cliffs above the San Juan River, at a place in the river known as the Goosenecks, because of the way it makes a very severe loop. Anyway, I wanted to continue our discussion about heat and managing heat. And if you recall in the last video, I talked about your heat quotient, basically being aware about how much exposure to extreme heat you can tolerate before you're at risk of having some kind of heat-related damage. Keep in mind, all of us old folks out there, our tolerance for extreme heat is going to get less and less as we get old. That's going to happen to pretty much everyone, regardless. It's just what happens. That's why, you know, when there's these major heat waves, you always hear about some elderly folks who died in them because they couldn't adequately cool themselves. So that's just a natural process that's going to happen. Now, on top of that, if you're active in hot weather, what you don't want to do is hasten that along and shift your tolerance and sensitivity to heat any faster than is going to happen just as nature takes its course. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about hydration. And I think it's a very common topic, and we all think we know about hydration. But as I typically do, let me tell a story. And this just happened recently. The last video I made about heat, I was in Canyonlands. And it was getting hotter there as the week wore on. Not only that, it was extremely dry, very arid atmosphere. And there was virtually no wind. There'd be a gust every now and then, but there was no breeze. And as the week wore on, it was getting to the point where it really wasn't cooling down a lot at night either. So you kind of have all these factors playing into your experience out there, and you're out, you know, in the wilderness, you're hiking, you're walking, you're riding a mountain bike, whatever it is you're doing, in this kind of weather, you're probably sweating. So here's what happened. There were some folks, of course, camped down the way from me, and on night one, there wasn't a lot going on, pretty quiet. During the day and the next day, I had seen them, you know, go out with backpacks. I saw some guy on a bike, a mountain bike. So they were being active. And again, it was probably in the 90s at this point in the week. Anyway, that night, there was a lot of talking coming from the direction of their campsite. And I thought, you know, that's kind of unusual. They weren't that way the night before. Not only that, there were people walking up and down the road. And that was unusual. They weren't doing that the night before either. And I thought, you know, something's going on down there. Well, lo and behold, about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, here comes an ambulance. Now, if you've ever been to the Needles District in Canyonlands, you know it's a ways away from anything. It's quite a ways out there. And anyway, an ambulance came, did its thing, and then they left, and it all was quiet again. Well, the next day, when the ranger was making her rounds, I asked her if she knew what had happened in this campsite. And she said, yeah, someone was severely dehydrated and was throwing up, and they wouldn't stop. So I'm like, wow. So some pointers about hydration, and particularly camping. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to posit a scenario, because the truth is I don't know what led to this person's being dehydrated, but I can guess based on my own experiences. So again, you're out during the day and you're sweating a lot. One mistake people make before activities is, let's say you're in a campsite and you have your coffee in the morning and maybe some juice, you brush your teeth, so you have a little bit of water, but you're probably not really in a position, hold on, to say you're well hydrated when you leave. So the first hydration hint, especially in it's really hot, there's no wind, cooling is difficult, and it's arid, it's dry. So you're going to lose moisture whether you're sweating or not. The first hint and advice in this is pre-hydrate. Now, when I play golf and it's over 100 out, you can bet your bottom dollar I have been drinking water all day long up to the point before I leave. I'm well hydrated when I go out the door. It's a little bit different in camp. However, that said, I make sure before I leave camp in hot, arid weather that along with coffee and some juice, I've had at least 2 cups of water. Okay? So do some pre-hydration. The other thing, and everyone's heard this a gazillion times, don't conserve your water. Bring what you need, because and especially in this weather, you're going to want to drink as you go. And even if you're not thirsty, even if you don't feel thirsty, you need to drink, especially if you're sweating a lot. So drink more than you think you need to as you're walking, and carry the amount of water that means. So in my last video, I talked about what it is for me. 2 liters typically, and now I carry 3 as a cushion. So that's the way that is. So drink while you're walking. Now here's what I think happened. My scenario that I am positing is that these people probably, or this person, probably didn't drink enough while they were out being active. Probably didn't really feel thirsty. And I think the cyclist I saw wasn't wearing a shirt, which means it might be hard to gauge sweat. You know, a lot of how we gauge sweat, for good or bad, is the wetness of our clothes, right? So I suspect they weren't drinking it. He or she wasn't drinking enough during the day being active. Then you go back to camp. Well, it's time to kick back and relax. Now, how do you do that? I can tell you how I do it. I like ice cold beer. And it feels so good right after you have been out in the heat, being active. That beer, it's wonderful. The problem, as you know, or if you didn't, is alcohol will dehydrate you, and so will caffeine. So if you come back and you feel fine, and now you're drinking either sodas or some kind of energy drink or alcohol, you're going to impact your hydration level. It will help you dehydrate. Now, sometimes you don't feel this for a while. So my scenario, back to it, come back from the activity, have a couple of beers, and now you're sitting around relaxing. You have dinner, and all of a sudden you start to feel lousy, and you don't know why. That's dehydration. So some advice for that scenario. Now, again, I have no idea what really happened. I'm just thinking, how could that have happened, you know, given what I know about dehydration? So here's the scenario. If you drink enough while you're out, you'll be in decent shape when you get back. Remember, it's not cooling real fast here, and it's not like you can just waltz into an air conditioner. I think these folks were in a tent. So you're relying on nature to cool you here, and it's difficult in this environment. Anyway, so you may be still sweating even though you're just sitting around, right? There's no wind. It's not cooling real quickly, so better grab another beer. So my advice is, by all means, have the things you enjoy. I do it. But when I was in Canyonlands in this environment, I was drinking a cup of water in between every beer that I had. I make it sound like I had tons, but I didn't. But I would drink that first beer, woo, tasted good, and then I'd drink at least 1 cup of water. And then later I'd have another, and maybe I drank 1 cup, maybe I drank 2. But the upshot of this is drink water too. Because if you don't, you run the risk of being dehydrated, and that's my best guess about what happened there. So let's recap. There's no reason to beat this dead horse of hydration. Pre-hydrate. That's really important. Have a cup or 2 of water before you go out. Drink when you're exerting yourself, especially if you're sweating a lot, even if you don't feel thirsty. And if you're sweating a lot, you may not even feel hot, but drink anyway. That's critical. And when you get back to camp, if you're going to have other beverages, especially beverages with caffeine in them or alcohol and, you know, high sugar too, speaking of soda, drink water in between. Be sure you're still drinking water. Don't stop just because the activity has stopped. All right. Okay, well, that's it for this episode of the Old Outdoor Broad. Everybody stay safe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the old outdoors. Thanks again.